Hi, welcome back to Jules' archive. Today I wanted to talk about all the books that I'm looking forward to this year in 2026, my highly anticipated new releases. To give you a sense of what I read about 3/4 fiction and 1/4 nonfiction. And for fiction, my favorite genres are historical fiction, literary fiction, graphic novels, and nonfiction, mainly memoirs, but also narrative-driven nonfiction. I really can't do like books that are just straight up facts. I need some kind of through line or nonfiction book. I also like to sprinkle in a little bit of romance in my fiction reading as well. I've organized the books by the months they're going to be released, so I'll start with January through the end of the year. All these releases are earlier in the year. I'm going to be looking at my laptop to read the blurb, so if you see me looking down, that's why. So the first book is This a Cry for Help by Emily Austen. I haven't read anything from Emily Austen, but I've heard really good things about her previous book, Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead, which is actually what you are stacked on right now. So I want to read Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead before her new release comes out. I've heard that the writing is really irreverent, quirky, but full of a lot of heart, so I'm really excited to get into it. In terms of the blurb, Darcy's life turned out better than she could ever have imagined. She is a librarian at the local branch, while her wife Joy runs a bookbinding service. Between the two of them, there's no more room on their shelves for their ample book collections, various knickknacks and baubles, and dried bouquets. Rounding out their ideal life is 2 cats and a sun-soaked house by the lake. Sounds perfect. But when Darcy receives the news that her ex-boyfriend Ben has passed away, she spirals into a pit of guilt and regret, resulting in a mental breakdown and medical leave from the library. When she returns to work, she is met by unrest in her community and protests surrounding intellectual freedom, resulting in a call for book bans and a second look at the branch's upcoming DEI programs. Through the support of her community, colleagues, and the personal growth that results from examining her previous relationships, Darcy comes into her own agency and the truest version of herself. Is This a Cry for Help not only offers a moving portrait of queer life after coming of age, but also powerfully explores questions about sexuality, community, and the importance of libraries. I feel like for any bookish person and someone who's a big supporter of public libraries, this book sounds like it would touch on a lot of relevant issues in the last couple of years in the United States at least, and I think globally as well. But also sounds like it would have a lot of heart to it and kind of an uplifting message by the end, or at least that's what I'm expecting. And out of all 3 of Emily Austen's books that I've heard of, this one sounds the most up my alley, just based on kind of the premise. So I'm really excited to read Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead, and then hop into Is This a Cry for Help on January 13th. Okay, and then flipping to nonfiction is The Other Side of Change, Who We Become When Life Makes Other Plans by Maya Shankar. I heard about this book actually through my workplace. I work for a really big company that's global, and sometimes they have different events through the like mental health employee group, and this one came up, and the book comes out also on January 13th. The author has a crazy background. I'll just read that as well. But for the blurb, life has a way of thwarting our best laid plans. Out of nowhere, we're confronting the end of a relationship, an unexpected diagnosis, the loss of a job, or some other twist of fate. In these moments, it can feel like we're free-falling into the unknown. As a cognitive scientist, Maya Shankar has spent decades studying the human mind. When an unwanted change in her own life left her reeling, she sought out people who had navigated major disruptions. In The Other Side of Change, Shankar tells the riveting, singular stories and weaves in scientific insights to illuminate universal lessons hidden within them. The result is a rich portrait of our complex reactions to change and a deep well of wisdom we can draw from during these experiences. Shankar invites us to rethink our relationship with change altogether. When a big change happens to us, it can lead to profound change within us. The unique stresses and demands of being thrust into a new reality can lead us to uncover new abilities, perspectives, and values, transforming us in extraordinary ways. What if we saw moments of upheaval as an opportunity to reimagine who we can be, rather than as something to just endure? What potential could we unlock within ourselves? Whether you're processing a past change, grappling with a present one, or bracing for a future one, this book is a wise and thought-provoking companion to help you discover who you can become on the other side of change. I don't usually love like self-help leaning books, just because I think that could be a very personal experience to read. which can fit really well, but oftentimes I think kind of just comes off as information that we know inherently, or at least I might know and like take some learnings from, but ultimately isn't that powerful. So I don't usually read a lot of self-help, but this one sounds, again, very relevant to the year we're in. And over the last few years, I think everyone has felt a lot of change, better and for worse, in their lives. So I'm really curious to see what she has to say. And I also looked up the bio ahead of the event that I'm going to for work. And Shankar has a bachelor's from Yale, PhD from Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar, and also like did a stint in violin at Juilliard. So she just has a really interesting background. The background of an author is important, I would say, for nonfiction, but isn't the only reason. But this book sounds compelling as well. Okay, the next one I'm so excited about is Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy. I loved Jeanette McCurdy's memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died, that came out in 2022. It has just had such a lasting impact, and it's been a book that I've thought about several times and found myself recommending quite a bit. And I'm really excited for McCurdy to release a novel because she expressed interest in that, in writing fiction throughout her memoir, and then also in interviews that I watched afterwards. So I'm really excited to see what will come, and the themes in this book also sound interesting. So this comes out on January 20th. Waldo is ravenous, horny, blunt, naive, wise, impulsive, lonely, angry, forceful, hurting, perceptive, endlessly wanting. And the thing she wants most of all, Mr. Corgi, her creative writing teacher with the wife and the kids and the mortgage and the bills, with the dead dreams and the atrophied looks and the growing paunch. She doesn't know why she wants him. Is it his passion? His life experience? The fact that he knows books and films and things that she doesn't? Or is it purer than that? Rooted in their unlikely connection, their kindred spirits, the similar filter with which they each take in the world around them? Or perhaps it's just enough that he sees her when no one else does. Startlingly perspective, mordantly funny, and keenly poignant, Half His Age is a rich character study on a yearning 17-year-old who disregards all obstacles, or attempts to overcome them in her efforts to be seen, to be desired, to be loved. That sounds really good. I'm just, really excited to give that one a read. I think this book could go really wrong, but it also could be really, really like thought-provoking and just like a raunchy read. So I'm really excited. I also love that it's a teenage girl because there's so much nuance to that experience. The next one is Where the Girls Were by Kate Schatz. It's 1968 and the future is bright for 17-year-old Elizabeth Baker. She's a valedictorian of her high school with a place at Stanford in the fall and big dreams of becoming a journalist. But the seductive, free-spirited San Francisco atmosphere seeps into her carefully planned, straight-laced life in the form of a hippie named Wiley. At first, getting loose and letting herself fall in love for the first time feels incredible, but then everything changes. Pregnancy hits Baker with a force of whiplash. In the blink of an eye, she goes from good girl to fallen woman, from her family's shining star to their embarrassing secret. Sent to a home for unwed mothers, Baker finds herself trapped in an old Victorian house packed with a group of pregnant girls who share her shame and fear. As she reckons with her changing body, lack of choice, and uncertain future, Baker finds unexpected community and empowerment among the girls who went away. Where the Girls Were is a timely unearthing of a little-known moment in American history where the sexual revolution and the feminist movement collided with the limits of reproductive rights and society's expectations of women. As Baker finds her strength in her voice, she shows us how to step into your power even when the world is determined to keep you silent. So this is what I love about historical fiction. As the blurb specifies, the book kind of covers the liminal space between sexual revolution and feminist movement, but also still a lot of scrutiny on reproductive rights with a lot of shame there. So I am really excited to read that one and learn a little bit more about that time, what that might have looked like for individual young women. And of course it's set in San Francisco, which is where I live. I heard about this book and author from a book event at a local bookstore, the Booksmith in Haight-Ashbury. Where the Girls Were comes out on March 3rd. Another book that I learned about and author that I learned about from a book event in San Francisco is The Complex by Karan Mahajan, which is another historical fiction literary novel. In a sprawling complex in Delhi, the sons and daughters of S.P. Chopra, one of India's political architects, live together vying for influence in a family shaped by the great man's legacy. By the late 1970s, his descendants are scrambling to define their own futures in a still young nation on the brink of transformation. Sachin Chopra leaves for America with his bride Geeta following not long after, as the newlyweds are eager to forge their own lives beyond the pressures of the family compound. Yet Delhi remains an inescapable force, one that keeps pulling them back, even as Geeta is menaced by Sachin's predatory uncle Laxman. A man of ruthless ambition, Laxman ascends through the ranks of a rising Hindu nationalist movement, caught between his political aspirations and his personal transgressions. Meanwhile, Vibha's sister tries to keep the peace and reputation of the family intact, even as she wrestles with her own exile. As India erupts in violence and long-buried secrets come to light, the embattled Chopras must reckon with the cost of power, the weight of tradition, and the shifting nature of love and alliance. Equal parts brilliant family saga and piercing political drama, the complex is a virtuosic model of revenge and redemption, ambition and undoing, loyalty and love by one of the most lauded voices in contemporary fiction. I haven't heard of Mahajan, but his previous book, The Association of Small Bombs, was a finalist for the National Book Award, which has me intrigued, but mostly the blurb for this sounds really interesting as India is modernizing and people are kind of grappling with that, and follows a family who immigrates to the United States and is kind of grappling with that experience as well. So I am really looking forward to this and hearing from the author as well at the Booksmith. And then on March 31st, The Night We Met by Abby Jimenez is released. So this is the second book in the series Say You'll Remember Me. Say You'll Remember Me came out in April of 2025, and they're part of a series, but all the novels are standalone. It's just that characters kind of intertwined. So I suspect that one of the side characters from Say You Remember Me will be the main character in The Night We Met. I don't love romance a whole lot. Like, I really only read Emily Henry and Abby Jimenez. I like how Abby Jimenez grapples with more serious topics, generally having to do with like physical and mental health and different conditions. I think she does it in a pretty empathetic way, but some of her books are better than others. I didn't love Say You'll Remember Me, mostly because I felt like it was pretty rushed in how it was writing about characters' mindsets, but I still am holding out hope for The Night We Met. I always really enjoy her books. In everyone's life, there's a split-second decision that can change everything. For Larissa, it came when choosing which guy to ride home with after a concert. That night, she had no idea she'd met the perfect man. She and Chris are great together, co-parenting a slightly unhinged rescue Yorkie, sharing their favorite books and judging bread. Pumpernickel for the win. For the first time amid all her side hustles to scrape by, things finally feel easy. But Chris isn't the one who drives Larissa home all those months ago. Chris is her boyfriend's best friend. All Chris wants is for Larissa to be happy. Standing by on the sidelines is slowly killing him, but making a move would destroy someone else, and he's just not that guy. That doesn't sound like the strongest premise, to be honest, but it's by Abby Jimenez, so I bet I'll enjoy it. I don't have like the highest expectations, but I will be reading it for my library anyway. And that comes out on March 31st. And then in April comes Planet Money, A Guide to the Economic Forces That Shape Your Life by Alex Mayasi and the hosts of NPR's podcast, Planet Money. I don't listen to Planet Money anymore, but I used to. My parents introduced me to the podcast when I was in high school. I've learned a few things here and there about like kind of personal finance and economic forces behind current events and kind of what I'm feeling financially, so I'm kind of intrigued for what they're going to say. In terms of blurb, hello and welcome to Planet Money. Millions of listeners trust the world's leading economics podcast to explain the mysterious inner workings of the global economy and the forces that affect nearly every decision we make. Through expert research and delightful stories, the Planet Money hosts help everyone see the world like an economist. For their first ever book, longtime contributor Alex Mayasi and the hosts of NPR's Planet Money present brand new stories and insights gathered from more than a decade of reporting that reveals ways AI might help you or replace you, demystify dating markets, and show how pro sports' dumbest contract holds the secret to building wealth. Taking readers on adventures to a smartphone factory in Patagonia, a raisin cartel in California, and an indigenous reserve in Canada that might just have the solution for the housing crisis, Planet Money shows how economics shape our world and how we can harness key principles to make our lives a little richer. I'll be honest, I kind of stay away from media on money and economics because it stresses me out. I don't think I'm like particularly in tune, although like I want to be financially responsible. So I think this book will be a little bit out of my comfort zone, but probably something that will benefit me, if not just be a little bit interesting. I do like the way that the podcast Planet Money presents topics in an accessible way, so I think this book at least should be like pretty easy to read and at least mildly interesting. Planet Money comes out on April 7th. The next one I'm so excited for. Ooh, there's a giveaway on Goodreads. I'm gonna enter that real quick. That's exciting. But the next one is The Future is Peace, A Shared Journey Across the Holy Land by Aziz Abu Sarah and Maoz Inan. Quote, "We live next to one another, yet we are segregated by roadblocks and checkpoints. We share the same dream of a better future for our children, but we are so divided by fear and anger that we cannot recognize each other's humanity. The wounds of our history run deep, but if we are to build a shared future, we must bring down the walls of ignorance and hatred that divide us," end quote. Palestinian Aziz Abu Sarah and Israeli Maoz Inan are unlikely peacemakers dedicated to finding a solution to the bitter war that has decimated historical, ancient land and ended family lines. Despite the losses they have suffered, the resolve of their friendship has taught them that strength and unity are more powerful than the violence of separation. Throughout their travels, they have been constantly in the face of so much pain and suffering on both sides. When there have been so many lives lost and families shattered, how can they ever find hope? Their answer is always the same. One cannot find hope. We must create it. In The Future is Peace, Sarah and Inan take readers on their unforgettable week-long journey across the Holy Land while exploring each other's personal and national histories in a land of competing narratives, amid the turbulent push and pull of near-constant war and the recent devastation that has rocked the world. Their mission, to explain the naivete in believing that more violence can bring security and prosperity to either people, while in search of a true and lasting peace. Pairing unapologetic candor and inspirational prose, Sarah and Inan are sending a message to humanity that the people have the power to make change. Peace is achievable not just between the river and the sea, but throughout the world. Even that blurb was written so well. I admittedly don't think I know a whole lot about the nuances and rich history behind Palestine and Israel. I've been interested in a long time about reading some books recently written about the current war in the region, but there hasn't been one that I think is written in the way that I'm looking for. I'm really intrigued in this one because it's written by a Palestinian and an Israeli together, and it also seems a little bit my kind of memoir based in terms of their sharing their personal experiences and also making an argument for peace. I'm really curious to see what my impression will be from reading this. I'm sure this is a book that's going to be controversial, but that makes it just all the better for me to read. The Future is Peace comes out on April 14th. And the next book is by Douglas Stewart, who wrote Shuggie Bain, which was the winner of the 2020 Booker Prize, and Young Mungo, which I've also heard is really good. I've had his books on my TBR for so long, but haven't gotten to them, honestly, because they just kind of sound like they destroy me. You know when you push off reading books that you think you'll really enjoy? That's what Shuggie Bain is for me. So before John of John by Douglas Stewart comes out on May 5th, I want to read Shuggie Bain. At least Shuggie Bain, maybe also Young Mungo. His books just sound so good and up my alley. Out of money and with little to show for his art school education, John Callum McLeod takes the ferry back home to the island of Harris to find that little has changed except for him. In the windswept croft where he grew up, Cal begrudgingly resumes his old life. Stuck between the two poles of his childhood, his father John, a sheep farmer, tweed weaver, and pillar of their local Presbyterian church, and his maternal grandmother Ella, a profanity-loving Glaswegian who has kept a faltering peace with her son-in-law for several decades. Cal wonders if any lonely man might be found on the barren hillsides of home, while John is dismayed by his son's long hair and how he seems unwilling to be saved. As lambing season turns to shearing season, everything seems poised to change as the threads holding together the fragile community becomes increasingly knotted. John of John is a singular novel about duty and patience and the transformative power of the truth. It is a magnificent literary work that shows Douglas Stewart working at an even higher level of artistic creation. We'll see about that last line, but just sounds really good. It sounds like it'll destroy me emotionally, and I'm really excited to get into Douglas Stewart in 2026. I feel like 2025 was like the book year for me. Like every author that I love, especially several favorites from 2024, were releasing new books. In 2026, that doesn't feel like the case for me. I'd rather authors that I love like take their time, you know, with their next book. So I'm not mad about that. But there is one author that's become a favorite that is releasing a book in 2026, and that is Maggie O'Farrell. She's releasing a book called Land on June 2nd. I loved Hamnet. I read Hamnet about halfway through 2025, and it was just like a searing exploration into what Shakespeare's life could have looked like, and namely his wife Agnes and his children, what their lives look like. And it was just full of like heartbreak after heartbreak, but also a lot of like warmth in the family and deep love. And I just thought it was so well done and just heart-wrenching, and also like a uniquely somewhat accurate version of depression, which is what always sticks with me. I really felt like I sat with and understood Agnes's depression after Hamnet dies. So I really, really recommend Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, and I'm very excited for Land. On a windswept peninsula stretching out into the Atlantic, Tomas and his reluctant son, Liam, are working for the Great Ordnance Survey project to map the whole of Ireland. The year is 1865, and in a country not long since ravaged and emptied by the Great Hunger, the task is not an easy one. Tomas, however, is determined that his maps will be recorded in the disaster. The British soldiers in charge are due to arrive any day, expecting the work to be completed, but Tomas is sent off course by an unsettling encounter in a corpse. His life and those of his family will never be the same again. Liam is terrified by the sudden change in his taciturn father. What was it that caused such cracks to open in Tomas, and how is Liam, aged only 10, going to finish the mapping and get them both home? Land is a story of buried treasure, overlapping lives, ancient woodland, persistent ghosts, a particularly loyal dog, and how, when it comes to both land and history, nothing ever goes away. This sounds like something I haven't read before. It sounds like, you know, historical literary fiction with like kind of a mystery edge to it, a thriller edge, and that intrigues me. But Maggie O'Farrell's prose is just so beautiful that I can't wait to just like be steeped in this novel. One of the quotes is, "You will never understand how the land remembers how deep the roots grow." That sounds so beautiful. I'm so excited. Those are all the books that I'm looking forward to in 2026. I would love to have more translated works on my list, so if you know of any books coming out from your favorite authors that are written in other languages and being published in English, or maybe even some Spanish in 2026 for me to practice, I would love to hear. And if any of these books that I talked about today sound interesting to you, please let me know. I have reserved all the ones I can from my public library, and we'll be looking out for the releases later in the year. Other than that, I hope you have a great week. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.